Chairwoman Amanda Jackson Denmark.
Here.
Vice Chairman Charlie Whitmore.
Here.
Sir Michael Brock.
Here.
Commissioner Rich Delpore.
Here.
Commissioner Lydia DePaul. Commissioner Jim Flynn.
Here.
Commissioner Jason Stewart.
Here. Notice regarding adjournment, the Planning Commission will not hear new items after 9:30 p.m. unless authorized by majority vote of the commission members present. Items which have not been heard before 9:30 may be continued to the next regular meeting or special meeting date as determined by the commission members. May I have an adoption of the agenda? Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. May I have an adoption of the minutes for February the 28th? Have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Public comment. Carrie, do we have any public comment?
Not for before the item, no.
Do you have any old business?
No, we do not.
New business, we are going to hear about the proposed prioritization of the fiscal year 2025 capital improvement program projects. A request by the town of Bluffton for recommendation of approval at the town council of the fiscal year 2025 capital improvement program. Oh, Pat, you're presenting? Not Kim? No, Kim? Just Pat?
No, Kim.
Okay.
Kim said she wouldn't do it if I was sitting up here.
And I'm sure she'll have something to say.
Okay. Good evening, Madam Chairman and Commissioners. I'm here tonight to present the fiscal year 2025 capital improvement program and obtain your input regarding the prioritization of the proposed fiscal year 25 project list. As required by South Carolina Code of Laws, the Planning Commission is charged with reviewing the CIP project list and make a recommendation regarding how the individual projects are prioritized. Your recommendation will be taken to Town Council in April and for their consideration in setting the final CIP project priorities for the 25-year capital improvement program and budget. There are 37 different projects in the CIP currently. About 85% of those really are projects that are ongoing and span multiple fiscal years to complete. These ongoing projects have already been ranked in previous years, and we're really not looking for input regarding reclassification of any of those ongoing projects. The CIP project list falls into three basic buckets. The first buckets are projects that are completed, that will be completed by the end of June and will be removed from the fiscal year 25 project list. There are 12 projects in that category. The second bucket are projects that are new in fiscal year 25. These projects are currently unranked and require Planning Commission input. The final bucket is that 85% group of projects that were previously identified and prioritized in prior years. And those are, some of those are carrying forward into fiscal year 25. We have a real sophisticated grading system here. If it's a high priority item, you have a category 1 or a level 1, and if it's lower priority, it's a level 2. None of these projects that I'm going to present are in rank order. So here's the list of completed projects, the 12 projects. They are basically sewer projects, lighting projects, some park projects, and some facility improvement projects. These are going to be off the list for 25. Now this list is basically all the projects that are carrying forward for 24 into 25 plus new projects. Can you all read that by any chance, or is that a problem?
With glasses.
Trouble, I know. The resolution on the image is poor. I got a little bit of enlargement and may help. I'm not sure.
Thank you.
Okay, this is the proposed list for 25. It includes ongoing as well as new projects. And what I want to do here is really kind of go over the new projects where we really need your input as far as how you would prefer them to be ranked. The first one is item 5 on this list. It's called Town Facilities ADA Compliance Implementation. The town this past year has hired a consultant to do a space needs analysis for all town buildings and facilities. As part of that analysis is a review of ADA compliance in our buildings. So that's ongoing right now. By the end of this fiscal year, we'll have a list of items that should be taken care of in order to meet the ADA requirements and compliance issues. So because that's a federally mandated item, staff recommends that should be a priority number 1. The second new project on the list is number 15. It's Buckwater Place improvements. This really is the Evercore Park property. The town bought that property a couple of years ago, and it's been open to the public and has done a conceptual master plan. That plan was presented to town council about 3 months ago, and the town council asked us to proceed forward with the improvements that are planned for that project. So they're not in a hurry to implement all the improvements, but they do want us to go ahead and proceed with the design of that so we can budget it out over the next 3 years. So again, because it's something the council has reviewed and approved, we see it as a priority 1 project. The next one is item 16, which is public art. The town council adopted a policy or resolution to establish a program to implement public art in some of our town-owned properties and facilities. They've initiated a public art committee, and they've been meeting for the last 6 months, and they're coming up with projects right now. And there's been money budgeted in fiscal year 25 to do some of those initial public art projects in some of our town properties. Again, since this is something that was adopted and proposed and we have a committee working on it, they'll probably have a list of projects by the end of this fiscal year and ready to implement. So we see it, again, as a priority number 1. Item number 22 is historic district power line conversion. Essentially, that came out of a memorandum of agreement with Dominion Energy, where they were proposing to help us put some of the overhead power lines underground in portions of the historic district. A lot of these areas that's inside the project are actually in streetscape projects that are kind of under design right now, but there are some areas on the perimeter, DeBose Lane, Maiden Lane, and a couple of the cross streets that are really not being studied at this point for streetscape projects. So in order to kickstart that portion of the underground conversion of the power lines, we'd like to go ahead and start. We recommended to council a new project this year to start obtaining easements, start doing planning for those perimeter streets. Again, priority number 1, so that can kind of keep on track with our streetscape projects that are underway right at this point. The final one is like the third one from the bottom. It is Schultz Road drainage improvements. We recently completed the Godey Schultz sidewalks and lighting project, and as part of that project, we wanted to do some improvements to Schultz Road drainage. The ditches are always full of water, at least in the south end of the property, of the neighborhood. But we were unable to get the right permits to do that. So we kind of stopped on that particular aspect, finished the project, and now we're under design of trying to improve the outfall for the Schultz Road drainage area, and so that we can get better conveyance of water from the ditches there. So again, see it as a priority number 1. This is that list in a different format. Essentially, it kind of categorizes by project type. It also provides the numbers in the fiscal year '25 of what's going to go to council in some form for this year's budget request. And it also has some projections for out years, but that's kind of a dynamic portion of the spreadsheet. We add to that as we get projects designed and we get cost estimates. We fill in numbers there. So really, that's what this sheet's all about. We do have a kind of a map that shows where these CIP projects are located and what neighborhoods they're in. And if you're interested, you can visit our website. That has on the front page of the website is a CIP icon. You go to that and you click on the story map. That gives a description of every single CIP project. You know, what's the status of it, the budget of it, project photos, plans, and that kind of thing. There's a lot of information in there if you're interested. This is the distribution of the CIP projects. I'm not going to go through all of these, but these are the typical evaluation criteria that staff and municipalities use when they're trying to rank CIP projects. Again, legal mandates, one of them, health and safety, welfare items, economic benefit, those kinds of things are usually what is used in prioritizing projects. So, Planning Commission action. Planning Commission has the authority to take the following action. They can approve the CIP fiscal year 2025 prioritization as submitted with staff recommendations, or approve the CIP fiscal year 25 prioritization with revisions.
So we have to approve it.
Approve or approve? I'm available to take questions if you'd like. If you have any specific questions, I'll do the best to answer them. Otherwise, there is a motion in here.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone want to start or have any questions? Do you want to start, Charlie?
Okay. And this may not be the right place for this. I think public art is a great thing. I see the 200,000 in the budget for it, but what is the process of getting the artwork approved? Does this committee have the final, the art committee have the final say? Does council look at it?
Yeah, I think there will be a recommendation to council, but there are RFPs that the committee has already formulated. They've already done a solicitation for artists, and they're prioritizing local artists.
Well, you know, art can be very subjective.
Oh,
and
I
if
know.
you put the wrong kind of art installation down on the river, there's going to be the wrong kind of feedback, but it can
Right.
also be done very well. So that's why I was curious about that.
Does the HPC see it if there's public art in the historic district?
If there is a public project, they will be able to provide comment on it.
Will it go through them?
It doesn't go through them, they just provide, it goes to their meeting, but they will just provide comments back to the UDO administrator for approval on a public project.
Okay. Schultz Road drainage improvements brought to mind something that I now see every time it rains, now that I'm down in this area, and that is, I do believe we need to add to that to improve the road at Lawrence Street at Calhoun, specifically the side where the Pearl is. It is underwater every time it rains, and that is a major thoroughfare for people walking to and from the farmer's market. And you cannot, there's no way to physically walk through that area. So I don't know if it gets added to the projects or if it gets,
Are you saying Lawrence and Calhoun,
the
That
four-way stop where
intersection?
Lawrence and Calhoun is,
that intersection?
on Lawrence Street where the Pearl is, right next to the
Okay.
building, the Pearl,
Okay,
that whole thing gets probably what, about 20, 30 feet length, gets about a foot underwater when it rains.
well, I can give you a slight update on that. That project, that's Calhoun Streetscape project, and it's been ongoing for quite some time. We have some holdups with Dominion Energy in providing our design related to that. But as part of that project will be major drainage improvements all along Calhoun, and it will require some
Well, I guess the question I have, is there a temporary fix that can be done? Maybe.
Discuss that with Derek in Public Services for a maintenance issue.
Okay.
Because Lawrence is our street in that area, so that is our responsibility to take care of.
Okay.
We'll see if Public Services can do anything, as Calhoun Street will be years out yet.
Okay, yeah, I'm just, again, I'm looking for.
Understood.
A quicker fix, and that's a great way to do it. So we don't need to put it on this because it's addressed on this with Calhoun Street, but on a more immediate, we can, okay.
There is some existing drain inlets at that intersection that perhaps could be tied into.
Okay. Like I said, I just happened to notice it, and all these people walking to the farmer's market one day couldn't figure out how to get there because that was an impasse, so. The only other question I had, the Cove pedestrian bridges, the skids, I thought that was coming off of this project list.
It's sitting at the bottom of the list unranked because it's been in the action item agenda for our strategic planning work. No one's ever really it's kind of been in the back of people's mind. This is something we might want to try to do somewhere. The only problem with that is that there's not a very likely location for one at this point, in terms of coves near the water, there's so much conflicts with existing property owners. So I believe that we are considering a boardwalk across, one of the coves between Montessori School, between the Hargrave Building and the new property, Sarah Riley Hooks. I don't think it's gonna look like a skid, like a historic skid, because that's not gonna ever fly with, the requirements we have now in terms of construction issues. But you can call it a cove skid, but we are looking at that as a boardwalk option. There is no sidewalk there on, is that UG Cove?
This bridge over Eugene, yes.
Yeah, bridge.
So you're talking about putting it parallel to it on the Hargrave Building side?
Behind between Sarah Riley Hooks and Hargrave, so we have connectivity for pedestrian safety improvements.
But it would be pretty much near the bridge, it wouldn't be further up.
It would be behind the bridge over the cove as a sidewalk, as its own pedestrian bridge, if you will.
As an adjacent property owner, I'd be very curious to see those plans.
You know it will go through the public process, and you are actually keyed in on the public process
There should be a
immensely.
plan in the CIP story map.
Okay.
You can look at that there.
I just know it's come up a number of times that people are very adamantly opposed to skids going through potentially their property. I walk that all the time. We need a sidewalk solution there.
Which is why they continue to be every year unprioritized and unfunded, the skids. Council has no appetite. It was put on years ago. Quite honestly, I don't know how a project, once the decision has been made by subsequent council, there's no interest, how a project comes off that list.
Did we make it a priority 3?
That could be a recommendation as revised.
That'll break the bank.
I want to piggyback on that since you're talking about Sarah Riley Hook's house. That was my question. Are we doing something with that now? Because it says for 2025.
It's underway
A lot of
currently.
money allotted.
It's right now, Matters is doing the architectural plans for the cottage itself.
Okay.
We hope to have those done before the end of the fiscal year and get ready to bid that so that it's constructed in 25. That's what the dollars are in there for the cottage, not necessarily site development and park development.
What is it going to be used for? A town?
Artist in residence is what I've heard, kind of artist in residence or art studio kind of thing. Not somebody living there, but space for.
A place to be observed as they're working on their artwork.
Kevin, did you have something you wanted to say?
No, I was just gonna make sure to clarify, it's not that someone's living in there, it's, when we say artisan's residence, it's
Yeah,
an artist living there.
that's been the discussion so far. Very small, not a very large space.
Question, a process question more than anything. For the land acquisition, it was a priority 1 last year and it has no priority this year, but on the budget sheet, you showed 2.9 million.
I think it was still a priority 1, it's just, I think there was a typo about non-funded, let me see.
No, it shows staff priority dash.
Yeah, the staff priorities
Okay,
dash.
it's a priority one, believe me, but unfortunately, staff doesn't have a lot to say about it. That's always the town council.
So does that need to be updated?
Updated, yeah.
Yeah,
We should update that to 1, sure. Thank you.
How do we feel about recommending, that the Cove pedestrian bridges skids gets pulled off of it as we send it to council? Seeing as nothing's ever been pulled off, I'm kind of wondering.
I think that's a good recommendation. I think we can include that in our,
And your recommendations to council for their consideration as part of the 25 budget, we can totally put that in the staff report.
If
So
the
it's
rest of the
a
commission
matter of
agrees.
revising the recommended motion.
Kim, I told you you'd have to speak.
well, you have no confidence in me,
I was
do you?
gonna say, she should have been at the microphone, but I think we can hear her. Hopefully, everyone can hear. Okay. Anybody else have a question?
You've answered, also.
Does someone want to make a recommendation?
I move that we, planning commission concurs with staff priorities and recommends to council, the exact same as staff priority with the exception that we recommend the town council considers pulling item 33, Cove pedestrian bridges skids, off of the CIP list.
Is that, wait,
And changing land acquisition to a staff priority 1 and a planning.
do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Item number 2, this is a public hearing for the amendments to the Town of Bluffton's Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 23, Unified Development Ordinance, Article 5, Design Standards, Section 5.4, Wetlands, and Section 5.10, Stormwater, and Article 9, Definitions and Interpretations, Section 9.2. This is the first call for public comment. This is the second call for public comment. This is the third and final call for public comment for the UDO amendments public hearing. The public hearing is now closed. Charlotte.
Thank you. The amendments this evening are staff initiated, and they relate to some changes to our wetlands ordinance and our stormwater ordinance. These changes are a result of a Supreme Court decision from 2023 that limits federal protections for waters of the United States that were previously provided under the Clean Water Act. These changes unfortunately have an effect on our local wetlands, so staff is recommending or suggesting some changes, and I'll talk about that. We can go over those amendments in just a moment. So the limitations that were created by this decision, as you see here, these 3 bullet points, the waters of the United States have changed, and one of those changes includes that there has to be a continuous surface connection to navigable waters. And previously, I'm sorry, let me get that. Previously, wetlands were defined a bit differently, a bit broader, and they included areas that were inundated or saturated by surface or groundwater at a frequency and duration sufficient to support, or that under normal conditions would support the prevalence of vegetation that are adapted for life in saturated conditions. So basically swamps, marshes, and bogs. Unfortunately, that narrower definition now prevents some wetlands from having these federal protections. So what the recommendation is moving forward is to provide some protections so that we don't have any filling, any development, any draining or destruction of our wetlands. And so there are 3 sections of our UDO that would need to be amended. The first is 5.4, simply providing a cross-reference to Section 510. This is where the main changes would occur. And this would include creating a 25-foot riparian buffer adjacent to wetlands. Those wetlands would be identified using the National Wetland Inventory map. After speaking to our town attorney, we do want to make a minor tweak to the revisions or the amendments that we are proposing, and that includes identifying the adoption date of the ordinance, should this move forward and be adopted by town council, so that we can reference the actual date that the map that existed on the date of the adoption. And we are suggesting that a definition of wetlands also be provided. The review criteria have been met. Some of them don't apply, but there are some here that do, including being consistent with our comprehensive plan and a best management practice for stormwater. The Planning Commission actions tonight could include approving as submitted to you, approving with an amendment, which we are suggesting, or denying the amendment. If this moves forward this evening with a recommendation, it will be reviewed by council on April 9th for a first reading, and then it will go to a public hearing and second reading on May 14th. And this is the suggested motion here. Again, adding the date of adoption if town council should make that decision to approve the ordinance. And if you'd like, I can bring up the amendments.
Anyone have any questions?
Just one, Charlotte. I've read all this before, and what struck me as I was driving here tonight is opposite Hampton Lake on Bluffton Parkway, there's a big area that's all dead trees, and it's just plain groundwater that's sitting there. And in the definition, we talk about normal circumstances support a prevalence of vegetation typically adapted for saturated conditions. There's nothing alive there. Does that put us at risk of that getting around this as far as being a wetland?
And I feel like I might need to refer to Bill Bauer.
I'd like to speak. Can you come to the microphone, Bill?
State your name.
State your name and where you
I'm Bill
live.
Bauer. I'm the watershed manager. The simple answer is no, that would be considered part of a wetland area. Part of the process would be to identify the areas and make sure that any wetlands are currently in there, or we can exclude them from the process.
So the definition here talking about vegetation wouldn't have bearing on that particular area that I'm talking about.
Correct.
So, if I may, Commissioner Dunkel, I think
Would you
the,
like to introduce yourself?
gladly, Rich Summer Bruce, Bingham Mountain, Rose Summer Bruce, here for y'all, as an attorney for y'all. So, without getting into it's hard to give a hypothetical about this, very specific property. But generally, if you look at that definition, it's that under normal circumstances would support the line. So the way that the wetlands definition, and both Bill and Kim were kind enough to educate me a bit on wetlands over the years, but my understanding, and y'all jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, is that there are a couple of different types of wetlands, one of which is a temporary wetland, where we'll have a wetland appear and then disappear, relatively rapidly, the course of 6 months or so, versus a more permanent one. So the definition is intentionally broad to try to encompass as much of the wetlands in the protected area. Simplest way to determine whether there is an existing wetland is looking at the vegetation that is supported, what type of vegetation is growing there, but because of the nature of them, it's not always going to be fixed. It could be that that vegetation is not supported for a period of time, but then could come back.
Because vegetation, land, everything changes over time. So even though in the past, historically, it might be a wetland, it can change and not a wetland anymore, or vice versa. Something that wasn't a wetland can come in to be a wetland. And we will look at the fauna, what kind of life, animals, bugs, all that goes into it. Those things all get taken into account whether or not that's a wetland or not. It's not just because there's water.
I had a quick question. Is the town doing the delineation? I'm sorry? Oh, is the town doing the delineation or the determination of the wetland?
No, the town is not going to do that. We use the inventory, the wetland inventory map, to give us a baseline on it. If there's questions whether or not something would be a wetland or not, That's when surveyors that are trained to go out and look at that, they can then make a determination whether that wetland is there or not, and then we can move forward on that. That way, it's actually verified.
And I know that y'all are, given your experience, most of y'all are familiar with the process. But for anybody who may be listening along at home or who may be here tonight and maybe had questions about this. So as was touched on, this had to do with the Clean Water Act. So there was a Supreme Court case that challenged the regulatory agency's authority to, regulate development in areas that weren't, quote, waters of the United States. And because of how the Supreme Court determined a very narrow definition of waters of the United States, it has left municipalities, counties, and states to try to regulate those smaller wetlands at a local level. So Bluffton doesn't have anything in the code right now that would provide as robust protection as we would hope. And so I believe that's why staff is recommending this. Other local governments, other municipalities do have these. I think Beaufort County has wetland buffers and internal already built within their code. So it is just it's something that we need to make sure that we don't leave open abuse.
I think this is super important because the two pieces of property that Rich spoke about are they're right on what direction we're going on. Those were created in the last 17 years because of development. And those trees are dead. And they're dead over the 17 years that the two neighborhoods and Bluffton Parkway created those wetlands. So this is something we've got to jump on because that's just a minor, just a skosh amount of wetlands that we've created from the development that we continue to create.
Yeah, I'd be interested. I don't know if that is classified wetlands or not.
And I don't know off the top of my head. I'll look into it. I don't know.
It will be. It will be.
Is there a place for public comment or no? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions? All right, so anyone want to make a recommendation?
I'll make a motion. I move to recommend approval of the amendments to the Town of Bluffton Code Ordinance, Chapter 23, Unified Development Ordinance, as submitted by town staff, including the following amendment. The addition of the date of adoption of the proposed ordinance to provide a reference date for the National Wetlands Inventory Map.
Second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 3, Cornerstone Church Campus rezoning request, zoning map amendment, a request by Nathan Sturry of Sturry Engineering on behalf of the property owners, Cornerstone Church of Bluffton, and Laylee Mole for approval of a zoning map amendment. The request is to rezone parcel R610-036-0000014 from plan unit development to agriculture and rural mixed use, and rezone the other parcel from a PUD to agriculture. And Dan is going to present before we have the public hearing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is Cornerstone Church Campus zoning map amendment. The applicant is Nathan Sturry of Sturry Engineering on behalf of the property owners who are Cornerstone Church of Bluffton and Lolly Ann Mole. They are requesting approval of an amendment to the Town of Bluffton zoning map. Two subject parcels total 43.31 acres. And the parcels are contiguous and located south of May River Road, approximately 600 feet east of Stardust Lane. The applicant is requesting an amendment to the official zoning map for the Town of Bluffton to rezone the two parcels from the current plan unit development zoning designation to a mix of agricultural and rural mixed use zoning designations. This shows the location of the property. It is just east of the roundabout at Okatee Highway and May River Road. There's an aerial in the same location showing the subject property. Subject properties were initially approved by Beaufort County and development in accordance with the Beaufort County Zoning and Development Standards Ordinance. Properties currently contain 98,000 square feet of existing buildings, and that includes an equestrian center, dormitory building, maintenance facilities, multiple classrooms, and several accessory structures. On April 12 of 2011, Town Council approved the Mindstream Academy PUD zoning map amendment and initial master plan as it was presented at the time. And as a requirement of this zoning map amendment, a planning commission workshop is required. That workshop was held at our last planning commission meeting on February 28th of 2024. This is the existing zoning. Both parcels are currently zoned planned unit development. As a part of the PUD approval, the phase one, and I don't know, I can't get them, see if I can move around here. The phase one is considered developed, and the remaining 4 areas across the parcels that are shown on the map, those are considered undeveloped parcels. So I got a slide further on that shows permitted uses. Those would be permitted uses that would be allowed on the undeveloped parcels. I got a slide that shows a better shot of those locations side by side. But phase one is considered developed, where no future development can happen on that property. The existing residential has 1 single-family residential home on it, and that's Miss Moll's property. The proposed zoning is requesting the front 7 acres that front on May River Road to go to proposed as rural mixed-use zone district. The middle parcel that I just mentioned with the residential unit would go to AG, and then the whole back half that also includes the structures that I've already mentioned would go to AG zoning district as well. And this slide shows a comparison. On your left is how it is currently approved. So those PUD areas in red are showing areas that can be developed. The former slide that showed developable areas, and that goes deep back into the property. The proposed rezoning would isolate the rural mixed use permitted uses and the rural mixed use zoning designation just to the front 7 acres, with the balance of the property going to agricultural. This is just a comparison. Beaufort County list of zonings is on the left. The town of Bluffton is on the right. They're listed from top to bottom, from lower intensity, lower intense uses to higher intensity. The 3 arrows pointing towards the Beaufort County list represent the uses that are allowed in the current PUD, and the request is going to agricultural and rural mixed use on the right under town of Bluffton. This slide shows that the requested zoning takes you to a lower intensity of permitted uses. And I know everybody cannot see this, but we've got, there's 4 columns, and I've broken it up into 3 sections, getting it as big as I can on one slide. The farthest left column lists the land uses. These are the list of uses, and it's broken up by residential use, agriculture, commercial, lodging, so forth. The first column next to that is the Mindstream PUD. So that lists the currently permitted uses. P stands for permitted, C stands for conditionally permitted, and SE is permitted by special exception. The next column over is AG. That's the recommended AG is for all of everything except for the 7 acres that front on May River Road. As you can see, wherever you see red text, that's actually where something is currently allowed, but it's being removed both. But by the rezoning, that permitted use is not allowed both in AG or in RMU, rural mixed use. So don't know how well you can read this, but But essentially, we're going from a longer list of permitted uses to less permitted uses, and we're going, and across the property, the shorter list of permitted uses are up front, and AG is for the bulk of the property. So if you want to consider that in essence, a downzoning, I think that's a fair statement. For next steps, going forward, we had a pre-application meeting in July of last year. Planning Commission workshop was last month. We're currently at the March 27 Planning Commission meeting, where we're having a public hearing and a recommendation to council. It would go to council for first reading on April 9, and then it would go to council for public hearing and second and final reading on May 14th. This is the list of criteria for zoning map amendments. Planning Commission actions for consideration. It is recommend approval of the application as submitted by the applicant or recommend denial of the application as submitted by the applicant. Staff recommendation. Staff recommends approval and finds that the requirements of section 343 of the Unified Development Ordinance have been met and recommends that Planning Commission recommends approval of the application as submitted. And I have this suggested motion there. I can return to that, but I will open it up for questions.
It's public hearing, so I have to do that part. This is a public hearing for a request by Nathan Sturry of Sturry Engineering on behalf of the property owners, Cornerstone Church of Bluffton and Mrs. Mole, for approval of a zoning map amendment. The request is to rezone the parcels that we had listed for planned unit development to agriculture and rural mixed use, and rezone the back property from planned unit development to agriculture. The former parcel is addressed 11 Grassy Lane, consisting of approximately 41.29 acres, and the latter parcel is addressed 21 Lake Lane, consisting of approximately 2.02 acres. This is the first call for public comment.
Alan Dice.
Hello, my name is Alan Dice. I am I live adjacent to this property in the Landings neighborhood. I'm a member.
Address, please.
284 Wheelhouse Way, Bluffton. In the Landings neighborhood, I'm a member of Cornerstone Church. I believe that the proposed zoning changes would be beneficial to everyone involved, the town, the neighbors, and the church. And I respectfully encourage the Planning Commission to recommend the zoning changes as proposed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark
Chickini.
Please state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Mark Cicchini. I live at 180 Wheelhouse Way, which immediately is adjacent to the property in question. I very strongly feel that this is not the right use of this property, and I don't think the commission can make a determination on the rezoning question until they have full transparency as to what the plans are to be developed on this property. So I'm going to speak a little hypothetically. As I understand it, they're going to take the existing horse rink and turn it into a church, which is fine, of course. I'm Christian. And they're gonna, but it looks like it could probably seat about 1,000 people, I would guess. So 1,000 people would require about 600-700 parking spots. So where are those parking spots gonna go, would be my question. And when you look at the land, it looks like it's gonna go right behind our Wheelhouse Way, which my property is immediately adjacent to. So that would have a significant negative impact on my property value. When I moved to Bluffton, I thought I was moving to a slice of heaven. I didn't think I was going to move to a place where a parking lot was going to be right behind my home. I paid $40,000 as a lot premium to build in the landings. And I don't think the church has been transparent whatsoever. I think at the workshop, it was stated that they should reach out to the neighbors and people whose property would be impacted, and that has not been done at all. And in fact, just tonight, there's been no transparency as to what their plans are. So if they build a parking lot there, if you look from my backyard, it'll be looking directly at a parking lot of 600 or 700 spaces. Again, it's hypothetical because I don't know what the plans are. And if you go up to, and you say, well, build a fence. Well, if I go up to my bedroom, I'm now going to be looking out at a parking lot that's going to be like a Walmart parking lot. and we're gonna have to have lighting there, so that lighting will be on all evening. It's also, as you see, very deep into the woods from that main road. So my question would be also, how are you gonna protect that from nefarious activity that a parking lot like that would definitely attract? So I'm very much against this development. I think, the other thing I just point out, I just saw a slide for the first time, when the gentleman said that it would reduce the usage of that property. If you look at the usages that would be reduced, most of them are single family and other types of homes, and not a large structure that would then attract, as I said, 600-700 parking spots. And I would just ask the commission to ask a lot more questions before they consider this rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Josh Cook.
Hey, guys.
Josh Cook, I live at 41 Buck Point Road here in Bluffton. I've been going to Cornerstone for 25, 30 years, a long time. And I believe in what we're doing. And, I'm trying not to respond immediately to his concerns, but and there's a lot of people here that know more about what we're actually doing than I do. But from what I've heard, what I believe, our intention is to preserve the property as best as possible. I'm a big fan of trees. I think the people that I've worked with at the church are a big fan of trees. I think the parking lot right over here that's got a lot of oak tree cover and has impervious, did I get that right? Surface is kind of the direction they're headed. I forget which one it is, but the impervious, there we go. The one that water goes through.
Not a
Why can't we say that, right? But nonetheless, there's a lot of trees, as you see, between the church building and the neighborhood over there. A lot of times when they come in these neighborhoods, they come and just clear cut all the trees. I lived in Bluffton Park for a long time, and that's what they did over there. We had no trees on our property except the ones that were planted after the development was completed. That's not the intention. People aren't parking for more than 2 hours to go to church, and so I don't think the fact that stuff's falling on people's cars is a big concern. I think we're trying to leave as much as possible. I think I heard 75%, but I'll let them speak to that we're leaving. There's no plans for additional construction of new buildings in that agricultural zone that I'm aware of. Again, I'll let the people who've been working hard on this answer that. And in terms of the amount of total, we're only, and so that's a structure that's just a roof right now. It's open air roof structure. My understanding is they're developing half of that building structure. So it looks massive. It is massive. At this point in time, they're only enclosing half of it for the church. I think it's in the neighborhood of 600 to 700 residents. I'm not sure how many parking spaces. I don't know what the lighting concern is, or plan is. I think it's currently a dirt road. I think there is a plan to do some sort of road. Again, I'll let them speak to that, but I don't think it's a paved road. And so anyhow, I think it's going to be great for the community. We sold recently the property in the Cornerstone Church to the AME Church next door. We've got 3 years of a lease back. We're already a year into that 3 years because I own Corner Perk in Bluffton, and I've been through the construction process a few times. I know how much time is
up.
important. So there we go. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
There's no more public comment.
So this is a second call for public comment. And this is the third and final call for public comment for Cornerstone Church Campus rezoning request. The public hearing is now closed. Would the applicant, would the applicant like to speak?
Yes. Hey, Nathan Sturries, Sturry Engineering. I'm the civil engineer on the project. Jason Green, he's with the church. Got a comment you wanted to make?
No, I just wanted to say I'm here as a representative of Cornerstone Church, serve as the executive pastor, and just here to hear comments and concerns. And also, we were notified that we should hold a community meeting, which we're moving forward in, and we'll get a notification out to the community on April the 8th, Monday, April the 8th, out at the property, just so folks can get out and see what's going on.
To address some of Mr. Chickadee's comments here, right? We don't know what's gonna go on the front yet, so we can't propose anything yet. There's a lot of unknowns in terms of coordination with DOT, Buford Jasper, on potential joint ventures with adjacent property owners.
Nathan, can you speak in the mic?
Potential joint ventures with property owners on how things are gonna line up, getting infrastructure back to the property. So we can't present a plan right now as to what we're doing in the future because it's unknown. We're just trying to lock in uses that we feel are appropriate based on the current zoning and the town of Bluffton UDO, which will kind of mirror but drop the intensity of the overall development. As of right now, if the church wanted to move some developable area around, they could put a 40,000 square foot grocery store on this property if they wanted
Nathan,
to.
can you address us?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
So it is a down zoning and they are in every bit trying to protect, especially the back piece, from any heavy duty, large scale development.
When you say the back piece, what are you referring to?
The agriculture, the piece where zoning is agriculture.
Okay.
In terms of the parking lot right behind the homes along Wheelhouse Way, if you see kind of the second PUD zoning up from the south, that's where our current parking lot is planned. We have 264 pervious parking spaces we're putting there. We're going to treat it all with stormwater to be current with local requirements. In terms of lighting, we haven't got that far. We need to get through this rezoning before we can really dive in much further into the detailed design of things. But,
In your experience, do you think something like this, and I don't know if you've had experience in this particular use, as far as the parking lot lighting, can that be more pedestrian versus some of those larger?
It can, and it's you.
Yes, I know.
I know.
I'm just trying to help him, to help him understand what lighting means.
Absolutely. I understand where the commission's going. I understand where the applicant's going. It's my role and my duty to jump in here for people who may be watching and for the commission's tonight. So what's being requested is a rezoning. Rezoning is really, at its simplest, it's going to be changing the underlying zoning designation. It's not going to get into the specifics of what's going to be developed there. It's going to give you that list of particular uses and what sort of densities or other requirements can go for any future development. Currently, it's planned unit development, which has, depending on which planned unit development it is, we'll have a number of different uses that are permitted. When trying to consider this rezoning application, though, neither the Planning Commission nor the Town Council can get into exactly what is going to be built there, what size, what sort of parking requirements are going to be met, what sort of uses will be permitted versus what won't. Those are the type of questions that, if it falls within the zoning classification and it meets the criteria, and then it's up for y'all to make that decision. But according to staff, and again, they've provided the records, but it is, for AG, it is a substantial downzoning from what would currently be permitted to be built on the property under the PUD designation. Ag is the second least intensive zoning classification in the town's UDO. And then the RMU, residential mixed use, which is another low density sort of classification. So I know it's not a satisfying answer, but I want to make sure that we're steering the conversation in the right direction.
Yeah, I was just trying to help bridge a gap and realize that there are going to be options. I mean, we're not making those decisions now.
The question that can be asked is, lighting requirements under the PUD versus lighting requirements under agricultural, is there any difference?
They would have to meet the UDO requirements for all requirements, parking, landscaping, stormwater requirements, building type, lot type, all that's regulated under the Unified Development Ordinance would then have to be met.
Which is stricter than
the PUD
requirements that are there.
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. No, I was going to say that the PUD has a convoluted items that are somewhat difficult to understand, comprehend.
Potentially scary.
Yes, as well as some of the uses that are currently allowed, as been indicated up here. So again,
We're focusing on on our
yes,
side, the
yes,
uses,
so-
because there are more unknowns with the PUD than there are with the downzoning of the agriculture.
and we just want to make sure that everyone is clear, is that when you're making your decision, that you're not making your decision on, well, what lighting can be allowed, what parking can be allowed, is it pervious or impervious?
Or if it's even a church.
Yes.
Well, and let me just say, I thank you, Richardson, for saying that. For me, what it does is it makes more important the discussion you're going to have on April 8th with the community. So there could be some give and take about whatever it is going to be, whether it's trees or lights or parking spaces. I totally agree, we got to do that. That sounds like a really important meeting to have with the community.
And if I could, just so everyone knows that, you know, as you make a recommendation, you can't make a recommendation.
Neighbors,
For Bluffton as a whole.
yes. And I'm going to be blunt. In what we're considering, it's not as much about who the applicant is and what they plan on doing with it at this point, because we will see development plans. We can address buffers, we can address lighting, we can address pervious, we can address all that future. This is, in my mind, can we control and limit development more with the new zoning versus the current zoning? And what I'm looking at, guys, if we go under the UDO, that kicks in the tree cover of 75% on the lot that is not there now. That kicks in requirements like Kevin was just talking about. That removes a use. This property right now could become another Hewitt Oaks. It could have another stage, it could have events, it could have live music, all hours of the night, well, till 10. It removes that capability to do that. It removes the capability to put a large standalone parking lot in there. It removes the capability for light assembly and fabrication, recreational institutions, recreational facilities.
It removes a grocery store.
It removes, yes, large commercial. It removes the ability to clear cut, which they have right now. They can go in that lot tomorrow and clear cut it under that PUD, according to the documents the town looked up. I don't know if we're officially into the discussion part, but
Well,
I mean, I just don't.
Yeah, I mean, we can discuss if we don't have anything further for Nathan and.
I like making them stand up.
I know.
Hey,
it's
make me
great.
sweat, come on.
I just look at this, guys, and I see so much that could go sideways the way it is right now. And quite, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, leave it at that.
Yeah.
Anybody else got any other thoughts, feelings, concerns? All right, well then, if you want to leave it at that, Charlie, you want to make a motion?
Do we have the suggested motion? I move that Planning Commission recommend approval of the Cornerstone Church Campus zoning map amendment as submitted.
I have a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right, thank you very much.
Y'all aren't off the hook when it comes back for development. We're gonna be asking for a lot especially along Wheelhouse Way.
Is there any other discussion items that we need to know about from town staff? Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Anybody want to talk about it? All right.
Yeah.